Hello from the Dukascopy TV studio in Geneva. We are talking about possibilities for a Grexit. How probable is it? With Mr. Lorne from B Capital. Welcome to the studio.
Hi, Daniel.
So, have you been surprised that the Greek payment for the IMF has been postponed to June? And how worried are you that a political agreement maybe won't be achievable?
Well, I think that it's quite possible that even the Greek government was surprised that they couldn't make that payment. We've got language coming from the IMF, from Christine Lagarde, that she's been relatively surprised about some things over the last couple of months. We know that the Greek government was calling money back in from various departments to try and make payments and to keep the show on the road. It's quite possible that they just realised at the 11th hour that they couldn't make the payment. They were allowed to not make it, so it's not a disaster at this stage. It's been deferred until the end of this month. But obviously that makes everybody now sit forward and look at the end of the month as the possible accident waiting to happen, and maybe this was just a blip before the major accident later on.
So what's possible now? Potential haircut or a compromise, or really the Greek exit? And would a Grexit be the lesser evil, maybe?
Well, the situation is that the government in Greece got elected by saying that it was going to fight back against the Northern European creditors. Now they're in that position. They've got a duty to do what they said they would do to the populace. At the same time, they've got creditors who they've got to talk to work out a deal. So they put themselves in a fairly difficult position from the beginning. And we've got to remember that this is a radical government. This is an untested, inexperienced group. I was with this week a number of senior EU politicians hearing about what's been going on in Greece, and from what I understand, there is quite a lot of fear that this may become an accident rather than a scheduled stay in or exit. So we don't really know what's going to happen, and I think it's quite possible that what may happen at the end of the month could be a surprise to not just external investors but also to the Greeks themselves, and we'll have to see.
Are you positive that Grexit could be handled by the Eurozone, also after you have been in touch with senior European officials?
Well, I think that if we look at the situation in Greece, there is great possibility for a compromise. If they wish to be helped further, they have to do more, and they're not necessarily stepping up to the mark of the reforms that are required to match the kind of terms that other countries in Europe have reached. And it does set precedent if there is an exit. So an exit is bad for Greece, and most Greeks want to stay in the euro. The Greek government has said it wants to stay in the euro, and everybody else in Europe wants Greece to stay in the euro for stability, and the precedent of Greece leaving would be very bad. So whether it's scheduled or not, and whether it happens by accident or whether it's planned, it will be very bad for Europe. And I think it's better that a compromise is reached. Now, that doesn't mean to say that it has to be haircuts on debt. It could be, in my view, a very good idea to extend the maturities. If you have a borrower who's having trouble, better to extend the payments and work it out rather than making a haircut. And of course, what will Spain, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, countries that have really stepped up to the plate and done the maximum to reform and to get back in shape, what will they say if somebody's let off?
And final question, what do you actually propose to your clients? Or how should investors react, or how should they actually act now?
Well, we think that equities is still one of the most favourable asset classes to invest in. Cash yields nothing. The bond market is seeing yields rise and could be an unfavourable asset class for some time to come. Equities look attractive, and in Europe there is still plenty of room with the help of quantitative easing by the ECB. There is plenty of scope for European equities to grow, but there's going to be volatility. So provided our investors think they have the stomach for some volatility, then equities, and European equities over the US, and possibly even more interesting than Asia at the moment, is the place to be. But one has to expect that the next month could be quite exciting.
And maybe a little final word to yields, though the American and German 10-year yield has risen recently. How favorable are you? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the 10-year Bund has been the one to watch in the last couple of weeks. Of course, we had prints in Europe that showed that there was negative inflation, that the situation was looking really quite bad in the first quarter, and bond yields collapsed into negative territory. Now we've got some data in the last few days and weeks that shows that in fact things are looking better. We've now got inflation, albeit very small. There is some inflation, that retail is looking better, that unemployment has fallen slightly further than what was expected, and suddenly you've got this rally from negative about 0.25% to today reaching 1% on the 10-year bond. And that's shaken the market because it was going to happen in our view, and we expect it to continue. But one doesn't want to see this kind of volatility because it upsets investors. What we want to see is probably a gradual rise in interest rates as we see the economy gradually improving. And that would be a good basis for investors to work out which asset classes they should favour.
Many thanks, Lorne Baring, for your thoughts on the global and European economy. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
And thanks for watching. Do make sure to keep clicking back on the Dukascopy TV website for latest updates and exclusive interviews. Have a great day and see you next time.